Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Cold Scythe. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today, I will read to you a Lord of the Rings fic from Bloodwing Blackbird called A Merry Old Inn, which is a slight spin-off from the fic And Now Each Night I Count the Stars. Note, this fic is rated very much explicit. You have been warned. On with the show. A Merry Old Inn by Bloodwing Blackbird. One last check before bed. It was Bob's nightly routine, and he did not shirk it. No matter that he had been drafted into service inside, trotting pitchers of ale back and forth until his wrists ached and he could barely feel his feet. It had been a full night, for it was fair weather for travel. Even the hobbit rooms were all full up, and the common room was thronged with guests, and no wonder, for their Harper was in town. It wasn't only his worries that had Bob checking on the beasts. Suddenly, Bray had seen more than its share of horse thieving, so near a crossroad, and surrounded by wild as they were, and suddenly the risk of fire in a stable was a fearsome thing, and he had too many times found a lit lamp left carelessly behind. But it was not only that. It was that he liked it. He liked the stolen moment of quiet among the beasts, the stable warmed by their breath and smelling sweetly of their fodder, and less sweetly, but just as familiarly, of their dung, the soft sounds they made, restful and serene. He could just hardly say later what it was that he had heard, but just as he pushed the door open, he heard something, sort of a long, quivering sigh that lifted hairs at the back of his neck. There was something here that was neither horse, nor ass, nor ox. He pulled the door to and hoped that if it was a thinking beast, then it would think he had gone away. He stood there before the door, silent, until he heard it again. Another sound. This one a moan with a little hitch, like a hiccup, like a sob in the middle. Someone could have been hurt, was what he told himself, but he knew better. Silent as a hobbit, he tiptoed along the stalls. The animals were used to him and paid him no mind, except the occasional soft waffle as he passed. "Oh," said a voice, and it was clearly a voice this time. "Like that. Keep doing that." It was a shivery sort of whisper that made his skin prickle and made him feel hot right down to his skivvies. He cursed Nob for letting out his hail out without so much as a good morning. They'd had words about this before. Nob was always supposed to check with Bob first. "You like it this way, don't you?" coaxed another voice, one that made Bob stop on the ladder to let the shivers pass. Yes, Bob thought, he surely did. Blackbird. Bob thought he recognized that voice, but he couldn't put a face to it. A man's voice, though. It had nothing of that silvery magic in it, but he knew the sorts of things that might make a fellow sound like that, all rough and breathless like, and thought he would much mind if he kept going. "Tell me," coaxed the first. "You've had other lovers, surely. Do you like it better like this? Or do you like to do the fucking?" "I like both, Blackbird," he gasped. "Oh, you cruel thing." The breathing went high and thready for a moment, and Bob could hear the shivery voice humming a song that went straight to Bob's cock. And suddenly, there he was, hotter than he'd been since his teens. He should have left then. He should have left sooner, to tell it true. But he could no more have dragged himself away than he could have flown to the moon. He climbed another rung. The loft was dark, but for a slice of moonlight that shone silver through the window. He couldn't see them, not really, just in the fragments of their bodies that moved in and out of the light. But oh, he could hear them better. The sound of skin dragging against skin, the wet sucking sound of a mouth on cock. Every breath, every sharp little sound, every sticky little squelch. He caught a glimpse of a sharp profile, eyes like errant sparks, an unkempt mass of dark hair. "That's no answer, my bull." That was the shivery voice. Bob knew him then, though he always wore his hood up and hid his voice with a rasp. It was the Harper, the one who had started coming through a few years back. one who would never sing, but whose songs always made Bob feel powerfully strange. They shifted, and the light fell across the man's lap, his cock hard and leaking. One of the harper's hands grasped it, stroking Thumb over the head, while the other hand disappeared somewhere in the dark between the legs, behind his balls, pumping a rhythm that made the man thrust his hips up even as the harper bent to take the cock in his mouth. He fucked upward with a groan. "Like this, Blackbird. I like it like this," he said, his voice desperate. "I like it with you." He bent forward, the muscles in his belly straining in the moonlight, and pulled the harper up for a kiss, filthy and fierce, and Bob wondered what it would feel like to kiss those lips. Fucked soft and swollen and... oh, Bob had his hand in his pants then. How had that happened? The man. It was one of those rangers after all. The soft-spoken one with the ruddy beard burned his hands in the harper's hair and panted against his shoulder. The harper drew back then, and the man whimpered, and, with a growl, he snaked an arm around the other's waist, and they moved, their limbs a flash of pale freckles and ruddy hair and nut-brown legs, all washed out silver by the moonlight. "Can I?" murmured the ranger, holding himself above the harper. Bob didn't hear the response, but it must have been yes, because there were brown legs wrapped around the man's hips, and those hips were snapping forward and back like a piston, and Bob could have almost spilled there just from the sounds of their bodies. But the harper wasn't silent. He was murmuring, always, low in the man's ear, words that weren't the common tongue, words that couldn't mean anything to Bob, but that burrowed into his ears and made a nest there, like a song, like a spell. Bob was bent over now, his fist pumping hard on his cock, far past caring that it had quite obviously been wrong of him to stay and to watch, past caring what would happen if he was caught. He wasn't even watching now, bowed with his own furtive pleasure, the sounds from just a few yards away more than enough to have him spilling, putting his lips against a shout that tried to burst forth, holding on to the ladder with the scrap of awareness he had left. The barn was full of breathing, ragged and loud, and Bob couldn't tell whether it was his own that he heard. He peeked up, one last time. The man was sprawled over the other, quiet, sated, but the harper was alert, fire-bright eyes staring over the ranger's shoulder, straight at Bob. Bob fled, nearly falling down the ladder, stumbling through the barn, chased away by a simmering chuckle from the hayloft. Nop was in the kitchen, helping Sal scour out the pots before bed, when Bob burst through the door, wild-eyed and disheveled. "Are you all right?" Sal looked up from the skillet she was scrubbing. "Oh, yes, of course. What would be wrong?" Bob combed his fingers through his sandy hair. "You're all sweaty," Nob observed, drawing out a glass. Did you let the harper have the hayloft tonight?" Nob sighed inwardly, and Sal cut her eyes away from him. "I surely did. Here, let me dry my hands, and I'll get you your coins." No, that's not what I..." Bob trailed off, looking haunted. "What's wrong with you, then? You'll have your share." Oh, that's good then. It's nothing. He just gave me a start, that's all." Bob waved his hands dismissively. "Oh." Nob supposed that was understandable, going about all cloaked and hooded as the minstrel did. "I was just thinking, though," said Bob, after a moment. "He seems an all right fellow, doesn't he? Deserves better than a hayloft. We'll all get a bit of more coin when he's here, and he's free enough with his own earnings." Nob narrowed his eyes. That was true. Coins flowed out the minstrel's hands as easily as they were tossed his way. "I was just thinking, maybe, when he's about, we could set aside a room for him. You know, a proper one. With a lock." Bob's voice grew a little strained at the end. Nob glanced at Sal, who just shrugged. "If you think so," he said, "I'll talk to Barley about it. We'll take care of your friend." Bob laughed. Too long and too high at that. "Right. See you then, Nob. Sal?" He bowed them both. "Good night." Nob and Sal watched as he stumbled from the kitchen, knocking into a stack of plates and fumbling to steady them before he made it to the door, shoving it through with a curse. "Must have been quite a fright," said Sal, turning back to her washing. The end. Stay tuned.